Hello folks, and a warm welcome. You're tuned in to my meditation, the Outdoors series. My name's Guy Cross, and I'll be introducing you to some interesting people with some interesting ways of using the outdoors to help sustain a healthy frame of mind. With being an outdoor lover myself, and using the outdoors to take care of my own mental health, I've always been curious as to how other people use outdoor hobbies and activities to take care of themselves, and that curiosity led me to the birth of this podcast series. My guests will talk about their favourite outdoor hobby, and we'll go into depth of how it helps them find peace of mind. Hopefully one of, if not many of the hobbies within this series will help you, or at the very least inspire you. And that's the whole aim of these podcasts, to fill you with ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of before, and to hear some positive, encouraging, real-life stories from my guests. Sometimes, hearing someone else's perspective on a hobby or activity gives you a fresh new way of looking at it, which can't be a bad thing, right? So without further ado, let's meet this week's guest. Hello everybody. So today I'm speaking to Tracy Hancock, who lives on Anglesey in North Wales in the UK. She adores her family, her dogs and her cats, and she loves living the coastal life. For the last 14 years, she's been a pole and aerial apparatus instructor. So hello Tracy, thanks for joining us today.
Hi Guy, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good. I'm just intrigued about your job role to begin with and the pole and aerial activities. When did you start getting into all of that?
So I started pole dancing first, and that would have almost 15 years ago.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's a good amount of time.
Yeah. And what got you into that? What made you take up? Was it pole you started first?
Pole I started, yeah. So I was pregnant at the time, and a newspaper came through the letterbox, and there was an advert in it for pole dancing lessons, and it was not something that I'd ever thought about before, and I had no idea it was something you could ever learn, to be honest. I don't know where pole dancers came from, but instantly I knew I wanted to try it. So I called the number on the advert and explained that I was pregnant, but I really wanted to come to classes, and I was told that I had to wait until my baby was born. So yeah, I did. I saw my pregnancy time out, and I gave birth one day. I called back the pole dancing school the following day after giving birth, and I had my first lesson the day after that.
Wow, so you're pretty keen to get started.
Oh, yeah. I was really excited. I really, really wanted to try it, and never looked back. I've always said pole is like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. And, my first lesson, I just knew that I was smitten. I loved it.
Yeah. And when you got into your aerial activities, was it through pole that you kind of found out about aerial hoop and that kind of thing, or was that totally different?
Yeah, it was a natural progression, really. So the aerial kind of came in about 4 years later-ish. And yeah, I'd noticed that a lot of pole schools were offering aerial hoop or trapeze or silks classes. And I really wanted to try it. So we did a pole school outing. And we went down to Milton Keynes for the weekend. And while we were down there as a school, we visited another aerial school, and we had a lesson on each apparatus. We did an hour on hoop, trapeze and silks, so a 3-hour class. And yeah, I knew that I was smitten. Absolutely loved it. So I very, very quickly got myself a hoop and a trapeze, and I started learning some moves, and I travelled a little bit to get classes, and then I did my teaching certifications, and again, never looked back. Absolutely loved it. The one thing I don't do is silks. I do aerial yoga, which is using the silks, but unfortunately, you can't be a master at everything. So I'd love to learn silks. I've just never had the time.
Yeah, plenty of other things going on, right?
This is it. Yeah.
Especially with having a kid as well. You couldn't forget about the kid.
four kids I've got.
You have 4 kids now.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Yeah. Times 4. Fair enough. No, that's great. So when did you actually become like a pole instructor and an aerial instructor? Was it a while after you took it up as a hobby? I mean, did you wait a while, or did you kind of?
No, it was almost instantaneous. My first ever lesson, I got offered a job, which is kind of incredulous now when you look back on it. But yeah, I did my first lesson, and the lady that was teaching me asked if it was something I'd like to teach. And, instantly I said yes. So I did have a few more lessons for obvious reasons, and I started doing a regular qualification called exercise to music, which is what all aerobics instructors and Zumba and all that, they all have these qualifications, because back then there was no such thing as a pole dance qualification. So you could only get qualified in the fitness industry, not specifically for pole. I mean, the qualifications came out very soon afterwards, to be fair. But yeah, I started doing my training and did regular lessons. And within a year, I was teaching for the pole. And yeah, the hoop, again, it would have been within about a year of training my hoop that I did my first certifications and started teaching.
Yeah, so you must have known from the beginning it was like a passion for you.
Oh, just loved it. Yeah. I'd always, when I was growing up as a kid, I wanted to be a gymnast, and we grew up in a very rural area. Extremely rural area. There were 13 children in my whole school. That's, the kind of ruralness that we were in. And there was no such thing as gymnastics classes. There was nothing that I could go to. And I used to sit at home and, practice doing high kicks and splits and things in the hope that one day I'd be this gymnast. And of course, it never happened. But I think as soon as I tried pole and then the aerial stuff, that passion that I'd probably put to bed, it resurfaced, and it went, you might not ever be the gymnast, but you could do this and you could do it good. I never looked back. Loved it.
Oh, that's amazing. And obviously now it's a little bit different for you. It's your job. It's not so much a hobby, is it? But
no.
Back then, were you using that for your mental and physical wellness?
Definitely. There is something about exercise that the endorphins that it creates, that you have that feel good. You do a class, you do a training session, those endorphins have kicked in and you feel good. And when it's something that you're really passionate about and you really enjoy doing, you don't have that reluctance to get up and do it. You just want to. Yeah. And it used to be a social thing as well, that I would have friends coming over and, we'd play on the pole and then have a drink. And, so it was a social activity. It was good for my physical well-being. Mental well-being. It just made me feel happy. And of course, every time at the beginning, you don't know much. So when you achieve something, and it might be something very, very small, like a simple spin, but that feeling of, look what I just did, is so amazing. There really isn't anything quite like it. You learn to appreciate what your body can do. As opposed to, and this is what I preach to most of my students, because obviously body confidence is a huge issue these days, and it's stop thinking about what your body looks like and appreciate what your body can do.
Yeah.
And once you change that mindset, you really do learn to appreciate your physical self, and that was something quite amazing. And of course, because you started appreciating what your body can do, your mental health suddenly becomes much more healthy, that we're not looking at the wobbly bits on our bottom or our thighs. We've got rid of all of that, because guess what our legs can do? Guess what our stomach can do? It doesn't matter that we've got a roll or two or three. Look what it's just done. And that is a pretty amazing thing to watch as well.
Yeah, amazing. And just you just mentioned some of your students there, and there's a little special student of yours, actually, isn't there, called Anne?
Oh yeah, I love Anne. Absolutely adore Anne.
Yeah, I've just done a podcast with her recently, and what an amazing woman. She had fond words of you yourself as well. You know, she said you're a huge inspiration to her for putting up with her, as she says. But she just seems such an amazing woman, you know, just such an inspiration to talk to. But she was saying, you know, how it's done her well with her, not just her mental wellness, but her physical ability now, of how far she's come from when she started. I don't think she'd done anything before, had she? No kind of yoga or nothing really.
Anne has got no background in fitness whatsoever. A lot of people think this when they hear that I've got this 80-year-old lady in my class. They're like, well, she must have been doing it all her life. She doesn't have any background at all. She started when she was 78.
Unbelievable.
And she is just the most inspiring lady that I could ever wish to have met. She doesn't give up, you know. She obviously, at that age, you might have creaking joints, hip problems, knee problems, the arthritis. She will not give up. We call her Tenacious A. Because she just doesn't stop. You know, even the younger ones, you get the 18-year-olds that have just flopped on the floor and gone, no, it hurts. And Anne just gets back up and she's like, no, I'm going to do it. Yeah. It's amazing. Absolutely
like a little
amazing.
Machine.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, very inspirational. It was a great episode. I'll put the link to her podcast in the show notes to this one.
Brilliant.
If anyone's interested in listening to that, because it's just, like you said, she's 81 this year.
Yeah.
And just taken up aerial hoop for the last 3 years. And she went on to, I won't say too much obviously, but she went on to explain how well it made her feel. Every time she drives home from the class, she just feels
she
this
sings.
Sense of,
yes.
like, yeah, that's what she said. I sing when I go home, and oh my God, it's just...
She sends me a message saying, I've been singing, and I always know that means that she's, you know, so happy. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, really nice. Yeah, just moving on anyway. I know obviously you used to use these activities back in the day for your own mental wellness and physical as well, but you've taken to something else, haven't you? And you know, I don't know how long you've used this as your meditation, but you've got another thing that you like to do now to ease your mind. Do you want to let the listeners know what that is?
Yeah, so it's been a whole life thing that I've always used, and I guess, you know, they're not a hobby because you can't call animals a hobby as such, but they are my therapy. 100% they are my therapy. I have cats and dogs, but, you know, I think any animal can become a therapy animal.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So how many dogs, how many cats do you have? Do you have any other animals?
So we've got 8 cats. I know that sounds bad before people judge me, but we got a big house and a big garden and fields around us. It's not that bad. And 2 dogs. And my son has a leopard gecko as well.
Ah, nice.
And some goldfish.
Oh, the list goes on.
Yeah, that's it though.
Yeah, that's nice. So, I mean, there's one thing I do know that you do like is walking your dogs, isn't it? That's a main thing for you, to get outdoors and to get your dogs out there and just go on a nice little hike. Yeah,
well, the thing with animals is, unlike children that, you know, you can kind of fob off almost, you know, and they say, Mum, I'm hungry. Well, go and get something out the cupboard. You can't do that with an animal. Yeah. So what I find with the animals is you have to get up and if you're having a bad day, it doesn't matter. You can't just lie in bed. You have to get up. You've got to feed them. And with the dogs, you know, I'm going to say flirt with depression. I go through bouts.
Okay.
Where I get really low and then I'll come out of it. And I might not feel like that again for 18 months or 2 years. And then I'll just out the blue, I'll sink down. But when I'm in those low periods, the last thing I want to do is walk out of my 4 walls. I would quite happily just hibernate. But I can't. You know, they need walking. They need exercise. I've got big dogs. And as soon as I'm out the house, as soon as I have got myself up and dressed and, you know, we're off, it just changes. I find you can't sink into that low pit when around you've just got nature's beauty. Yeah. You know, it's that there is just something about being outside, the daylight as well. You know, you've got that fresh air. It can be gale force winds, it can be snow, or it can be beautiful sunshine. It really doesn't matter. Just as soon as you leave the house, that kind of depth of darkness, I'm not going to say it evaporates completely, but it lifts, and suddenly you start to see the wood for the trees a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, and I can understand where you're coming with animals as well. I love dogs, love any animal really,
Yeah.
And it's hard not to I don't know, feel a sense of calmness inside when you're around a nice dog or a nice cat. It's
Yeah, or even a not so nice. I'm not on about vicious one, but you get really characteristic animals as well, that they might just be really naughty or mischievous, but they're a distraction. They'll make you laugh. I think the majority of animals, I don't think there's really such thing as a bad animal.
No.
But yeah, they all have personality, and they all offer something, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think? What is it about animals that you kind of find therapeutic, and why do they make you so happy, do you think?
Now there's a question. So with regard, obviously I've already spoken about that incessant, you must do things for them. You have to, no matter how bad you're feeling, you have to actually look after them. But I don't know, there's something about a rhythmic purr. That when I'm sad and I'm cuddling up to a cat, that purr will literally take me to a place of complete relaxation. It's almost like, my little melody, my little nightlight, where it just helps me to drift off. There's something about playing ball with a dog that, you can't help but smile. When you're watching an animal just running around like a complete loopy creature, running after a ball and coming back with a waggy tail and a big smile on its face, that just brings joy. There's something about knowing that you've given an animal a second chance, or a third or a fourth chance, where maybe, I've got a couple here that they were literally about to be put to sleep, and you give them that new lease of life that they just wouldn't have had otherwise. And that gives me a sense of well-being, that I've done a bit of good as well. But yeah, it's something that I've actually had tattooed on myself. But there was a saying that I found, and I never did find the author of it, but it was, and it's talking about cats. It says, "My cat knows the song in my heart and purrs it to me when my memory fails." And I think that sums up a lot of what I get from the animals, that, when I'm in my depths of despair, when I'm feeling really low, it's almost like they remind me of who I was before I felt low, and they give me that little bit of a pick-me-up, that, it's okay to feel crap, because you'll come out the other side and we're still here. Yeah, there is, I don't know, there's just a real comfort that I get from them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you as well. And especially with the cats, I don't have cats myself personally, but in my work I have two, kittens. They're coming up to a year old now, but I have to take care of them, and I'll be laying on my bed sometimes, and one might come in and just literally sit on my chest and lie on my chest, and then start purring really quite deeply. And so I know exactly where you're coming from with that. It's almost like an om.
Yeah,
it's
very
just kind
much
of like,
so.
you just listen to it and you close your eyes, and it's just it's like a meditative thing.
I find it really hard to meditate. I was once told that my head is just too busy, and I completely kind of get that. But when there's a cat that's purring, I find myself drifting to the purr, and you kind of, that your own voice switches off, because it's almost like you've tuned into that. And I find it really, really relaxing. And it does send me to sleep. I suffer a lot with insomnia and rumination, again, the busy head thing. And there is something about the purr that I will instantly, if I'm snuggled up in bed, I find it so easy to drift off if I have that sound. And it's got to be a real cat as well. I've tried, the phone things, the imitation. It's not so good.
No, and I think especially if a cat's kind of lying on your chest as well, you can almost feel it, can't you? It's like putting its heart next to yours.
It does. It vibrates through you. Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, and with dogs, you get a different kind of therapy from them, don't you? Well, I do anyway. You get more of like an energetic kind of happy kind of I don't know, fun
Yeah.
thing. With cats, it's a bit more of a, I see them as more of a serious animal. Like they're more kind of,
Though you've not met all of ours.
I
Yeah,
might take that back then.
we got some very playful ones. But no, I mean the dogs again, my dogs are now they're both quite old. So they do still run around, but it's short lived and then they're exhausted for the rest of the day. But they do, I mean, they give the best cuddles. They really do. I've got this big wolf dog and he just nestles into you and completely smothers you with a cuddle. And it's so lovely. It really is.
No, they are, and I'm just thinking as well. Like, I mean, I do care work, and there's been quite a few autistic kids that I know that have had dogs, as pets for that reason, because it really helps them with their anxiety and when they get stressed and things like this. And
completely understand that.
Yeah, and they also, sometimes you'd have dogs come in just in to visit in the care homes.
That's right, yeah.
Just spend an hour with the dog and then they go away, and it really calms a lot of them down,
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what an animal can do. And it's almost like the animal senses the person as well.
Absolutely.
They kind of know when that person needs that extra cuddle, or that they quieten down if they know that person might be a bit anxious. And it's wonderful the way that they're attuned to us, and yet quite sad how we're not so attuned to them, really.
I know, yeah, absolutely. But I'm a big dog lover. Like my dad's dog, I can just look at my dad's dog in the eye and do certain eye movements, and it's almost it can understand what I'm saying with my eyes.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Like I'll look around the room, for example, as if I'm looking for something, and that dog knows that I'm looking for the ball.
Yeah.
So she'll try and she's then like freaking out trying to find the ball,
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to keep a serious face, like pretending I'm looking for something, and that's the first thing she thinks of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Yeah.
Very cute. So has there been a time in your life where you've been like really quite low and struggling a little bit, and you've had animals get you through it?
Yeah, I think the worst. Well, we've had lots of ups and downs through life, but I think the one that comes to mind for me, my grandmother. She was like my mother figure. She was kind of like my mum, really. And she was a very strong, determined lady. She would be up at 6 a.m. every morning. I mean, they had land like you wouldn't believe, and she'd go out there and garden it by hand, streamers and flowers, and amazing woman. And several years ago, she suffered a few strokes, and they kind of left her with severe dementia, and she was also bedbound. She couldn't get out of bed anymore. And she became very, very, obviously very weak, and just lost. And it happened so quickly that we kind of almost missed the deterioration because it was so quick. And my grandfather passed away pretty soon after it all happened. So she came and she lived with us, and we became her full-time carers. And, watching her deteriorate was probably one of the worst, I'm going to say, episodes of my life. The woman that I looked up to, this really strong kind of motherly figure, she was childlike. She obviously couldn't get out of bed to toilet, and most of the time she didn't know who or where she was. It was a bad episode, and it was a weird one because at that point I'd always cracked jokes and said, I want to be that old lady who eats cream cakes and has lots of cats, and I'd never looked past that point. I always thought death was just a part of life. But suddenly watching her, I became really quite fearful that if this is what old age brings, and what if this became my journey? What if I inherited a lot from my grandmother, from my migraines to my strong will, and suddenly I thought, what if this is something else that is my destiny as well? And what I found with the animals was, obviously being a full-time carer, I ended up spending the majority of my time in the house just looking after her. But walking the dogs was a huge escape. Not just from the caring duties of being that granddaughter stroke carer, but from my negative mindset. So the contrast from, outside, that beauty outside, to the ugliness of the disease that was kind of ravishing my nan was immense. You go out and the flowers were still blooming, the river was still running, the waves still crashed, the wind still blew. It was just like, this is life. What's happening to my nan was just a very sad part of that. And my mindset kind of changed, that, appreciate each moment rather than be fearful of something that it might not even happen. It's probably not likely to happen, but I felt myself when I was out there, I felt that I was living, for each moment, living for each day, rather than that fear that had almost kind of consumed me about a future of which I've got no control, to be fair.
Yeah.
And the walks with the dogs, they kind of became my serenity. Even the wettest, the coldest days, they became like a real appreciation journey.
Yep.
Now, if I hadn't had the animals, there's no way I'd have gone out. I would have stayed in. I would have just continued to do the caring role. I would have gone to work, come back, and taken back on that caring role. Because I had those animals, because I knew that I had to walk them, it was part of my, still a duty. Animals are a responsibility. You have to do things.
Yeah.
But because of that, my mindset just completely altered, and they became, like I said, those really joyful moments in life where it was like, life is still good, it's still beautiful, just because there's one aspect of it that is sad, very sad. It doesn't take away from what's going on around you. And then, those moments inside the house, those moments where I'd be crying or I'd be angry, and and I would feel that anger as well, that I'd feel guilt towards it, because it was like, you can't be angry with somebody who has no control. But at the same time, I'd find that, I was getting cross with her at times.
Yeah.
But, at those points, again, just giving that cat a cuddle or hearing that purr, it just brought you back down. And it was like, right, take a breather, take a moment, have a coffee, walk around the garden, do the hoovering, whatever you need to do, and then go back in with a completely chilled mindset, and things were much, much better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. You don't realize how much they're helping you out, so to speak. Like you just said, you just need that little cat to come up to you to have a little stroke or something. And it can calm you down, just even that, isn't it? Just being approached by your pet. And
and they knew as well, if I was sat there sobbing, and there were times where I'd be sat there sobbing, literally I'd have 3 of them just coming up and trying to get on my lap, because it was like, right, something's up.
Yeah.
Give the love. And it really did. Without that, maybe it was just a distraction, but honestly, my mental health went through all sorts of peaks and troughs during that period.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt, that they kind of gave me that, again, that bit of stability, that certain aspects of life didn't change, that I still had to go and walk the dogs. I still had to get up in the morning, still had to feed the animals. The kids are great, but, I felt more guilt, I think, towards the kids, that we couldn't go out, for days out down the park, or walks and picnics on the beaches, because we were looking after Nana. So in some respects, the children kind of almost confounded what was happening, whereas the animals were just a release. They just made everything, feel better. I didn't feel that guilt towards them the same way that I did towards the kids. It was, it was a tough period. And, she passed away, bless her, a couple of years ago now.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But obviously it's still very memorable. It's still very raw at the moment. And
I can imagine. especially with you being so close, you know.
Yeah, it was the best thing for her. I mean, it was an atrocious way to go, you know, to lose all your faculties like that.
Yeah.
You know, not just the loss of the limbs, you know, where you can't get out of bed, but to actually she lost her mental capacity completely at the end.
So sad.
Yeah, it was yeah, that was a rocky period, and I think the animals really, really kind of assisted me at that point in time.
Yeah, really helped you out, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the next question I have kind of on the list here was, why would you recommend this activity to others? But it's a little bit different for you because it's not, you know, I wouldn't recommend anyone just go out and get a dog and, you know, just for the sake of looking after themselves. But I mean, what would you like to say to the listeners?
There's another little saying, isn't there, that you can't change the world and save them all, but everyone you save, you change their world.
Ah, nice.
And I think the majority of people, not everybody can rescue for obvious reasons, but the majority of people could probably rescue one animal. Now, I hear lots of, you know, I can't rescue a cat because I'm allergic. Well, that's cool. But there's reptiles that need rescuing. Rescue a bearded dragon.
Yeah.
You know, or people that say, well, I work all day, I'm not at home, I couldn't take a dog for a walk, I couldn't rescue. Well, that's cool. Rescue a hamster.
Yep.
You know, I think people just get so blinkered by the fact that it's cats and dogs that actually, you know, there are animals from horses and pigs and cows right down to snakes and tarantulas that need rescuing. The animal sanctuaries are full, you know, they're overcrowded, they're underfunded. If everyone could if everyone who could logistically do so, rescue just one animal of any of those that we've mentioned, then those sanctuaries would cope so much better. There'd be, think how many less animals there would be. There'd probably be sanctuaries that closed down because they wouldn't have any.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I would say to people, is that if you can logistically just get one creature, be it a rabbit, a dog, whatever, then do so, because you're changing their world. You can't, you know, my husband says it to me all the time, you can't rescue them all. And it's like, well, no, I know this, but every one that we take in, we've made the whole world different for them. You've literally changed their world.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a nice way of looking at it, that people who think, well, there's no point me taking on one. Well, if everyone took on one, just think how different this world would be.
Yeah. And in turn, it'll make you feel good as well, won't it?
I think, 100%.
You know, you've saved a life, you've given it a good quality of life, and it's a good feeling for you as well. Yeah.
That's it, yeah. And they do give back. And I mean, people talk about reptiles and things. Honestly, reptiles can be really quite interactive pets as well. They can be lovely. I'm not keen on spiders, I'll admit, but I've heard that, you know, scorpions and tarantulas are also quite interesting pets. So
I've never had the tarantula. I've had a green Thai water dragon. That's
what
I had.
Amazing.
Many moons ago, but I had him for about 3 years, and he sadly passed away with internal problems.
Yeah.
Which is very sad. But he was, I definitely had a connection with him. Every time I came home from work, he would look at me from his log and he'd jump off and start scratching the glass. He'd come up onto my shoulder and I'd feed him some food. And, you know, we had our little routine, and I couldn't wait to get home to see him. You know, it was nice little feeling knowing.
What I say about the leopard gecko, you know, she comes up to the glass and she scratches on the doors asking to be let out, and you let her out. And, you know, so people say to me, oh, well, you know, reptiles, they're not real pets, are they? But actually they can be quite entertaining, and you can still strike up a relationship with them. They might not purr or wag their tails, but, you know, it's a different kind of relationship, and it can be still very rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everyone's each to their own, isn't it? Like you say, tarantulas. Yeah, I can't see myself having a spider, but, you know, I appreciate what they are, and I appreciate some people like them. I've got a friend, he loves them. He loves big, and I'm like, you weirdo. But, you know, but everyone's got their own little things, haven't they? So
this is it. Yeah.
But would you have any links to any kind of animal sanctuaries that you know of that I could tag into this podcast if anyone's interested in looking at this further?
The ones I mean, all my animals really have either come from Freshfields Animal Sanctuary, which is it's just outside of Carnarvon, this end of North Wales, or what I've had is vets phoning me up. My vets know me very well for obvious reasons, and they'll phone me up and say, look, we've got this animal, it's come in, it's been ordered to be put to sleep simply because the owner doesn't want to pay the vet's bill. Do you want to take it on? And I've been a sucker for those kind of creatures as well.
Okay, right.
But Animal Sanctuary, the only one that I use that I know around here is Freshfields. But I mean, in every county, in every town, there is a sanctuary not far away.
Yeah. So I guess it's just a case of finding the phone number online or something.
Yeah,
Animal
just
Sanctuary.
Tap into Google Rescue Centre, and
yeah,
honestly, I think people are shocked at just how many there are, and every single one of them is overcrowded and underfunded. It's
so sad.
It's so sad. Say if we can all do our bit, then what a nicer place this planet would be.
Absolutely, yeah. And that leads me on to my last question, really, for you. It's kind of relates. I was going to ask you, have you got like a personal story of gratitude? I mean, obviously, with everything you've said, but is there a specific time where you've like just felt a real sense of gratitude for the most simple things in life, or does it relate to what we've just talked about with your?
I think, to be fair, probably the one thing that I'm grateful for is my sanity. Is something you don't ever think about. You don't dwell upon the fact that you know who you are and you know where you're going.
You just take it for standard.
It's a bit like breathing, isn't it? You just take it for granted. Of course you wake up and you know who you are. I think that's the one thing that I am now grateful for, and I never thought I would ever say that, is the ability to, I've got my mental faculties. I know who I am.
I'm guessing you're relating back to your grandma, right?
That's very much relating back to my grandmother. With everything else, I'm just grateful to be able to do what I do, to save the creatures, to love the creatures, and to be loved back. And that works for people as well. If you can help people, if you can love people and feel that love in return, that's something that nobody should ever take for granted, because that's an amazing feeling. And when you are at your lowest point, if you can draw from the fact that this person loves you, or this animal loves you, and this creature or whatever needs you, again, you take real strength from that. I think that, to know that it's not just that we need people, we need animals, we need affection, to know that that's reciprocated. I would say that's something else that I really appreciate, and I never take that for granted.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tracy. Thanks for your time today. There's a little section towards the end of the podcast that I do called Turn the Table. It's where a guest gets to ask me a question. Do you have a question for me today, or no? Well,
what animal are you going to adopt, Guy?
The only trouble with me, do you know why I don't have an animal in my life right now, is because my life's very here and there. I'm not in one place at a time. I'm not very settled. I work 4 weeks on and off, so when I'm in work, I'm away for 4 weeks solid. So when I come home, I'm surrounded by animals, my dad's dogs, my friends, pets, and things like that, which I really love. But I would really, really love to have my own little buddy sometime, and that time will come. I've had dogs before. I've grown up with dogs in my family. Ever since I was a small little kid, my dad's always had a dog in his life. So,
fantastic.
It's a little bit sad, really, because I'd really love to have something, but I don't feel like I could take care of it right now.
That's good, because again, say they are a responsibility, and you have to be prepared for that. So it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
next question: when are you going to come and have a pole dance lesson?
It's only one question per podcast. Sorry.
Oh, all right, I'll let you off.
No, I'll come. I'll definitely come for that. I said to Anne, the woman we were talking about before, your 80-year-old. What's the word?
My aerial hooper.
Yes, I said to her I'd come to a hoop class at some
fantastic.
point. So I don't know if you do hoop and pole at the same night. But
well, it's all right. I'm quite happy for you to substitute the pole with a hoop. That's cool.
Oh, really? Okay, so I'll keep you and Anne happy then. Both. I'll just kill two birds with one stone and come to
Wonderful.
Do a hoop class. I'll take you up on that.
Brilliant.
Okay, thanks Tracy. Thanks for taking the time for us today. Thanks for talking about everything and going so into depth about, your grandma and the tough time in your life. I really appreciate anyone that speaks deeply about their problems that they've had. So yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Tracy, take
Cheers,
care.
Guy. Bye now.
See ya. Bye. Well, there we go. It looks like I've just signed myself up for an aerial hoop class as well as a potential pole lesson. That'll be interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed that chat with Tracy. With being an animal lover myself, I can totally understand how Tracy gets her meditation from her pets. I don't have a pet myself at the moment, but I do have cats and dogs in my life that I love being around, and they certainly bring happiness and joy into my life, as well as make me feel full of gratitude. One idea I did like of Tracy's was the subject of adopting a pet, and the fact that it doesn't need to be a cat or a dog. I believe the whole process of taking care of an animal in need in itself would be very beneficial for an individual's mental health. And I can say this because I found this through my own interaction with my Thai water dragon. So if you like animals, maybe give this a thought and contact your local rescue centre for ideas. Thank you once again for tuning in. If you want to join us over on Facebook and Instagram, then search for My Meditation Podcast. I'll leave the links to both in the show notes, as well as the link to the official My Meditation Podcast channel, which you're more than welcome to subscribe to. The Facebook and Instagram page offer positive, inspiring and light-hearted quotes, photos and videos designed to bring a little happiness into your life. If you found any value from this podcast, I'd highly appreciate it if you could rate it and review it. And if you're feeling extra passionate, then please feel free to share it with the world and spread the word. It all helps the channel grow, which in turn means we can reach more people, which means helping more people. These podcasts are getting released every fortnight, so I hope you can join us for the next, and who knows, it could be about an interesting hobby or activity that could possibly be a life changer for you. Until then, take care and have fun, folks. Peace.